I like movies that fucking push boundaries, you know? I like movies that are, trying hard to make us feel deeply uncomfortable. So
Yes.
like I didn't find it offensive or anything like that because
No.
it was a woman and that didn't get under my
Hmm.
skin at all.
I feel the same way about the movie. I enjoyed it. I enjoy a good round of torture in my movies, and I have no problem as an audience member just watching a movie. I have no problem if the victim happens to be a woman.
Hello and welcome to the first episode of The Cultural Abyss. My name is Markus Stiglegger. I'm a professor of film studies and also a writer of many books on film and other cultural phenomena. I'm also a musician, and I was the editor of a cultural magazine called Ikonen, which came out before 2010. It was a printed magazine and an online magazine. And the concept of Cultural Abyss continues the concept of Ikonen magazine. So hopefully my old readers will be with us on board, and also a lot of new people, which are all welcome here. And this episode, I will start with two very special and very exciting guests. You will see I was inspired by my jury work at the Festival of Sitges in Spain, where I was invited by Monica Garcia Masagué, who is the programmer and also the editor of 4 books on film in genre cinema, which are still available in English. And she invited me to write about German and Austrian female filmmakers doing thrillers and horror films, and which I did. And the year later, which was 2025, I was invited for the jury of the Méliès d'Argent, which is a prize for the best fantastic film from Europe. So I came to know several people, and some of them will be here in future. But the first of them are the filmmaker from Canada, Toronto, Canada, Jovanka Vuckovic. She's also the director of Riot Girls, which some of you might know, and she used to be an editor and writer as well. And Heidi Honeycutt, who is very well known for a huge book she wrote on women in horror film, which is called I Spit on Your Celluloid, and she's also a writer and has experiences in filmmaking. So these are my first guests, and many are to follow, so stick with us. In this episode, I welcome 2 dear guests, and first there is Heidi Honeycutt. Hello, Heidi.
Hello, how are you?
And there is Jovanka Vuckovic, now in Toronto. Hi, Jovanka.
Guten Abend, guten Abend.
Guten Abend.
Yeah, good night. You've been to the Berlinale, I read.
I have, yes.
Yeah.
I have.
Sometimes in the past. Okay. So, Heidi, you are a writer, an author, writing on film, and you wrote a huge book on women in horror film, which is called I Spit on Your Celluloid.
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
I did that.
And you did a lot of other stuff. So we come back to this. And
Okay.
Jovanka, you are a filmmaker, but also the editor, as I read, also of the magazine, Rue Morgue.
I was for many years, but a long time ago. So yes, I've been working kind of professionally in the horror genre for most of my adult life. And I often say that, like, when it comes to horror, I feel a bit like Lieutenant Ripley in Alien 3 when she looks at the monster and says, "You've been a part of my life so long, I can't remember anything else." That's me in my relationship to horror, right, Heidi?
I feel that. I feel that. I think that I could say the same sentence that
Yeah.
it's been a big part of my life, my adult life, shockingly. And I never thought that would be the case, but it has turned out that way.
Right, and my childhood too, because people always
Yeah.
ask me, like, "Oh, what was your?" This is probably leading to your one of your first questions, Marcus, which is like, how did you get interested in horror, which everybody always asks us. How
How
did
did
a
you know my
nice
first
girl,
question?
yes, how did a nice girl like you
Yeah.
Yeah.
What happened? Yeah.
want to get interested in thinking of ways of killing people? I mean, yeah, from when I was a little kid, my mom used to always say, as long as I can remember, as soon as Jovanka could pick up a pencil, she was either drawing or writing about monsters. And I think that some of that comes from being I was a childhood insomniac. I had a lot of trauma as a child, and so I would stay up late every night watching television. And in Canada, we would, watch late great movies, and they'd always have horror films every night on city TV. And then after 11, it was like all the blue movies, like the Shannon Tweed, blue
Yes.
movies after 11. So I would stay up all night watching horror movies, and they became, my friends. Horror films became my closest companions during some of the loneliest period of my life, and it has remained that way to this day. Yeah.
Wow.
So
What
that's
about you,
that's how it
Heidi?
happened for me.
You know, it's funny you mentioned television, and that's exactly where mine came from. I had parents that were they had me late, and they were both neither one of them were American, and they had neither one had grown up with television or honestly movie theaters. So the idea of preventing your child from watching something on television didn't make any sense to them, or not letting them rent the movie they wanted to rent. It just didn't make any sense to them. They were like, it's fiction, who cares? So I ended up watching a lot of things on television that I like. If you told me now, if you were like, oh yeah, I let my 5-year-old watch, you know, Piranha or whatever, The Howling, The Shining, I'd probably say, oh really, are they not scared? And I would watch those movies, and I would get absolutely terrified, and I would watch them anyway. And one thing that was pivotal for me growing up in Los Angeles was I did not have cable television, but in 1985, Elvira became the local horror host in Los Angeles, and I was obsessed. I fell in love with her. I loved her persona. I loved the idea that she was the hostess. She was the monster, not the woman in distress, and she was funny. And I don't think I'd ever seen a character like that. And some of the movies I saw on her show, I don't think I would have ever seen them until I was an adult if I hadn't seen them there. And it really sort of set me up to find the joy and the humor in horror movies, I think, for the rest of my life.
You guys are so lucky in the US because this tradition of horror hosts didn't really exist outside of the United States. I mean, you had Elvira, you had Vampira before her,
Yeah.
Zach Hurley, the Cool Ghoul, and every kind of like local network seemed to have somebody. In Canada, we didn't have, all we had was the hilarious House of Frightenstein, which was amazing because it was a children's show. It was like a variety television show, and Vincent Price was the host. And
Oh, that's so cool.
yes, and so when I was a little kid, I'd stay up all night watching the Roger Corman cycle of Poe films, and then in the morning at 5 in the morning, hilarious House of Frightenstein would come on. And what's really cool about that is that like Vincent Price agreed once he found out that it was like a variety show for kids, he agreed to come up to Canada, and he shot all of his vignettes in like 2 months for like a case of beer in Hamilton. And so he was the sort of like, figurative host who invited you into his castle. And then, sorry, you all right?
Um,
That's okay.
sh-
And so,
yeah,
I'll just continue. Yeah. And
yeah.
so, that was the closest thing. And it was hosted by this comedian named Billy Van, who played all the characters. He was the Wolfman DJ. He was this, vampire guy. He played almost all the characters, and it was an amazing show. So a lot of Canadians, particularly, growing up in Southern Ontario near Toronto, grew up with my generation, grew up with hilarious House of Frightenstein. So
So,
yeah.
growing up in Germany was a totally different affair because in Germany, horror film has always been considered a kind of a taboo genre, and we have this very strong censorship from probably the 80s till the early 2000s, which made a lot of films, forbidden films, like even The Evil Dead or the Fulci films and Dawn of the Dead by Romero. It was totally banned some years. And so for
During
me,
the video nasties era.
yeah, video nasties is this
More UK.
English phenomenon, but it
Yes.
was very similar. And we had this very state official going after films. So for me, it began with TV, as you said, as a child when I watched the Jack Arnold films. Jack Arnold Explains was this series where he talks about about his films, and I saw his films like Tarantula and so on. And so this got me started. And I had allergies as a child, so I had to stay home a lot. And I read the Gothic fiction during the day, and in the evening I watched then TV.
You mean like the Castle of Otranto, Horace Walpole, that kind of sort of thing? Yes.
Yeah, Bram Stoker,
amazing.
Edgar Allan Poe stuff, Mary Shelley.
Yeah.
And some things I didn't understand. I was too young, probably with 9 or 10 years, but it really did something with me. And so I tended towards this abyssal, dark directions.
It's
and
funny
so,
that sorry, you say that German horror films in Germany are so taboo, and yet the history of horror films, the history of horror films is rooted in German expressionism, right? Like it's like the very beginnings of cinema began with horror films.
Yeah.
Right?
So it changed over the years, and I think it's a phenomenon of the after the Second World War, because Germany, as we know today, was formed in 1945. So after the Second World War, it became this democratic state, and so we had a very strong censorship after the war imposed on Germany in the beginning, and then this developed, and sexuality, drugs, some politics and violence were always taboo, and but in the Weimar Republic, everything was possible. You see, there is naked bodies in the films from the Weimar Republic in the 1920s. That was no problem at that time. And so films like Nosferatu, and you referred to, and even Richard Oswald has filmed Edgar Allan Poe. The Severin video will bring out these films and restore them and so on. So it's a lot of things at that time. German genre film ended during the Third Reich. And after that, it was restarted with Heimat films and German westerns like the Winnetou films, which were very successful. And after that, there came the sex films of the 70s, which were really successful. And then the new German cinema and the connection with television changed the German film landscape. So most of the successful directors moved abroad, like Wolfgang Petersen, Roland Emmerich, and all those people. And so we have a very weak position in genre cinema in Germany.
Even today?
Yeah, I mean, there's always something going on, and close friends of mine like Jörg Buttgereit, they have been active in this field, but it's really a problem to make a living out of genre cinema. And I'm teaching at a film academy in Ludwigsburg, and students always ask me about this, and I teach them thriller, suspense, building up suspense and stuff like that. And it leads them more towards streaming series and crime series. And so the crime moved towards television and towards streaming now, and is probably a specialty in Germany. So if there is a German genre besides comedies, which you never see because they are not funny abroad, it's probably crime thrillers.
No, I think that, what's the name of the show? Is it Tatort? That show?
Tatort, Tatort is the big thing. If you do a Tatort, you can live off that for years because you get a lot of money from that.
Well, you mentioned Jörg Buttgereit, right? He's, Germany's enfant terrible, right? And it's not, he doesn't exactly make this easily digestible stuff, right? I mean, Necromantic, Schramm, he's more, he's more of a subversive underground
filmmaker,
yeah.
And he never moved into the cinema in a general sense. And now he makes radio plays. He's a writer, and so on. He does different things. And So that's typical for the German environment. They won't let him in. If he presents like a screenplay for a serious psycho thriller or so, they would reject it because it is very important where you come from, and it's like a theater, a funded theater thing, like a very high cultural mechanisms probably.
Yeah, and they just look at it and go, he made that movie about, the woman who fucked a corpse. So
Yeah,
maybe not,
forever.
maybe not. We're going to not fund this guy's cultural
Yeah.
endeavors. Poor
But
guy,
I will
he
talk to
can't
him
get out
about
from under
this.
that. I'm
We
sorry?
will have an episode of this podcast with Jörg Buttgerät in the future.
Oh, great.
That's interesting. I think it's different in the United States in that it's all profit motive. They don't care who you are or what you've done. Well, maybe sometimes now with Me Too, but prior to that, you could have made that movie that Jorg made, and then if they thought they could make money off your next movie, they would fund it. I think the difference is where the funding is coming from. I think if you have a government, if you have arts funding, they don't really have a profit motive. Like they have really no interest in recouping their money, making sure that audiences will go see it. So in one sense, you have a lot more freedom. And on the other side, they can afford to say no to a project simply because they don't like the values it represents. Whereas I think in the United States, especially, and to a certain extent other countries, but mostly the United States, it's if they thought that you could put an apple on a table and film it for 2 hours, they would pay you $150 million to make that movie. If they thought they could make 300 off it, it's a very different scenario, I think, and that's fundamentally the main difference I really think between the film industry in Hollywood and the film industry in other countries that is funded by government arts funding, really. Yeah.
Yeah, I could imagine that. Yeah, that's a very important difference. What made me invite you both was some years back, I was invited to talk about women in horror film. And I announced that. And a female author told me, there's nothing about a middle-aged man talking about women in horror films. And so I thought, next time I will invite two women and discuss the situation of women in horror films. So would you say there is a special female take on the horror genre?
Do you want to field that one first, or do you want me to go for it?
So you invited two middle-aged women on the show.
Yeah,
to talk
yeah, yeah.
I didn't say that.
I don't know what you're talking about. I keep a painting in my attic, and I bathe in the blood. And anyway,
the painting in my attic looks like shit. It just keeps getting older and more disgusting looking every day. It's really weird. But
okay, did you say, is there a specific? Yeah. I'm sorry.
Is there a specific female take you see in female directors doing horror in difference?
Of course, of course, it's this. We have a different point of view, and we have been excluded from the conversation for the last 100 years of cinema. Has been the history of cinema has been predominantly white men, and even today, just 7% of all working film directors are women, and this continues to be a problem, and even despite the fact that Alice Guy made hundreds of short films in the at the beginning of the dawn of cinema, and pioneered sync sound and narrative filmmaking.
Yeah.
And nobody fucking teaches her in film school. Most of her stuff
I do.
was attributed to men. Well, thank you.
Yeah, but I started a few years ago.
yeah.
But the thing is, nobody knew she was a lost pioneer, right?
She wasn't in any of the film books, know. So how are you supposed? That's another thing, is how are you supposed to find out about things if nobody else is writing or talking about them? So it's not like, the same is true for us. If there's a specific film movement happening right now in a country and we're not part of it, if no one tells us about it, if we don't know that history, is that really our fault for not knowing?
Right. And she in particular, as a director was really, really fascinating, because her motto was be natural. She would have like a sign that said, just be natural, because in a time where people were acting, like cartoonish and, and she was asking actors to act naturally. And, so, I mean, maybe, what do we bring, the female gaze, right? What do we bring? We obviously bring a different point of view. And something I've been saying for, years that, I think is just sort of catching on, is that, when we allow women to tell the stories that we want to tell, and we give them that opportunity, then new ideas emerge. And, everybody in Hollywood passed on the substance, right? Everyone in Hollywood, because these are the kind of closed conversations that happen, is like, well, nobody wants to see a movie about some 60-year-old woman and her body issues. And it's like, it actually, having had my finger on the pulse of horror films and the development of horror films for many decades now, they do want this. And then, of course, Corley goes and makes the movie, and outside of the Hollywood system, and then everyone in Hollywood regrets passing on the substance, right?
Yes. I think that's very common. I mean, didn't the Stranger Things filmmakers, didn't they pitch it, I think, 20 times before anybody picked it up? And now everybody that they pitched it to that said no is kicking themselves. And I guarantee you, I know what was those conversations about the substance. I know you're right. It was, nobody wants to see that. Movies with older women don't sell.
Yes.
Horror fans are teenagers. They don't want to see their mom on camera. They want to see other teenagers. And they think they're right. Like, they genuinely believe they're right. The problem is that no Hollywood executive, no person who's in charge of the money, it's impossible to predict what audiences want. They try and try and try, and they have these algorithms, and they have people who devote their lives to studying marketing of movies, and they have these graphs and these charts, and none of it matters. It's because you can make a movie and it can be amazing, and for some reason it does nothing and doesn't resonate with anybody. And you can make a movie that you think is never going to sell in a million years, and all of a sudden it becomes the substance, and everybody loves it. And there's almost, it's impossible to predict what audiences really like and what they'll really want. And
I agree.
They have to take risks, and they don't like taking risks. They don't like taking risks. That's why all the movies kind of suck right now.
Wouldn't you agree, though, that that the horror genre is badly in need of new perspectives?
Absolutely, 100%.
We have a woman problem in the horror.
100%.
And I think that women are the next great frontier of horror cinema. I really do. I really do think that, because we've just spent, there's so few of us. There's so few of us trying to make movies, and we hear crazy shit like, well, we hired a woman once to make a movie and it wasn't good and it didn't make money, so we're just not going to do that again. And so can you imagine saying that about a man? Like, we hired a male director once, but he didn't make a great film and it didn't make a lot of money, so we're just not going to hire any more men.
Yeah, that would be very odd to hear. And that does, it's so surprising. You'd think that when you hear that, like, I'm sure to people listening to this, they're going to think to themselves, like, that can't, people don't really say that. She must be exaggerating. No, people really say things like that. And it's so amazing. And even today, people say things like that. And you're like, what is going on? Like, that's so, it's almost funny. It's comical that people are willing to go so far as to say something like, oh yeah, we can't, movies by women just don't sell. And then you can look at them in the eye and you can say, well, what about the substance?
Yes.
And they'll say that, yeah, that made money, but honestly, movies by women don't sell. And then you can name 5 other movies that you can say, well, what about, this movie, that movie, and they all made money, and yeah, those movies did. But honestly, they'll just, it's like there's a glaze that goes over their eyes.
One woman
and you don't, it's so weird.
One woman once made a movie that didn't make money, and then she went to director jail, and all of us had to go in the fucking clink with her.
Yeah.
All of us.
Yeah.
And
yeah. And the thing is there are filmmakers who are women who make bad films. Like, that happens. And there are men who make tons of bad films. But you're right, the consequences for the women are different than the consequences for the men that make bad films, for sure.
and the opportunities too. So, for
Yes.
example, I can give you so many examples of a guy who makes a low budget horror movie about a killer clown, and then next is doing the next Star Wars or the
Yes.
next Godzilla.
Yes. Or they made a short and now they're
Exactly.
directing Godzilla. That has
Exactly.
happened.
That literally never happens to women.
No,
Literally.
they get handed a TV series because they made a low budget movie in like 2007 that did well on streaming, and
Yeah.
now they're a showrunner. Like those things happen, and that doesn't happen to women. Like I guarantee you, the next time you talk to Coralie, is that she's going to mention several films that she wanted to make next that she
Yep.
has trouble funding.
Oh yeah, for sure. And because and the answer to that is quite plainly institutionalized sexism.
Yeah.
That's that's what it is.
And there's one other observation that I have that I think is really, really true because I've thought about this a lot over the years, and I think it's true for me in my personal life also, to a certain degree. I think that men are judged on their potential, and women are judged on their experience. So, and you probably know a couple of the kinds of people I'm talking about, Jovanka, but people who maybe have the same background that you and I do in, let's say, journalism and horror, or going on to have jobs, have positions in, let's say, the film industry that they have zero experience in, but that they're given these positions that they actually end up doing a good job at and are qualified for, but on paper they're not. Whereas as women, you never see that happen to women. You never see like a woman in development who has zero development experience
Yes.
because she wrote for Fangoria or something
Yeah,
like
she
that.
wrote for
That does
Fangoria.
not happen.
She's a super
No.
fan. She's a super fan. Let's hire
Yeah.
her to develop fucking,
And
the next.
I don't want to sound like I'm disparaging anybody who has those jobs who's male, because I think there are a lot of people that actually do a really great job, and I'm happy for them. I just think it shows to the truth that men are judged on their potential. People can see their potential. People can see, oh, they made a short and it was really good. I wonder what they could do with Godzilla. I wonder what they could do with this next franchise. Maybe they could do part 3 of the Star Wars. Whereas with the women, they say that's a great short. She doesn't have any feature experience. It would be a huge risk to give her a feature. We can't do it. And they're not thinking about it in terms of men or women. Like it doesn't occur to them that it's because it's a woman. It genuinely doesn't. It's just something that happens in people's brains, and it's so covert and not blatant most of the time.
It's such a bizarre paradox because I remember being on a panel with my dear friend Jen Lynch, and she said something I'll never forget. And she said basically, like, I don't understand why things are this way because, like, anything men can do, I can do while also bleeding.
Yeah,
So,
I mean and there are things men can do that women can't. I don't want to carry 80 pounds of military gear on my back in the desert. I don't want to.
Women do it.
A lot of women do it, but you know what? I probably easier for someone who's physically. There are physical differences, but there's not a lot of mental differences that would prevent somebody from, say, directing a movie. Like there's no, nothing that makes any sense regarding any mental task or anything involving creativity.
Right, but we're highly emotional creatures, and that's the other thing. We're not allowed to lose our fucking temper. We're not allowed to, we get labeled as difficult, crazy, any number of adjectives, like any reason to not, hire women. It's unbelievable. But then you have these male directors who are, predators who act completely insane, who just keep getting rehired and failing upwards. And I don't really want to make this whole podcast us about this thing. But
Me neither.
It's just to illustrate to you, how difficult this landscape is, and how and maybe one of your questions is, why aren't there more movies directed by women?
Yeah.
And there's your answer.
Okay, yeah, it makes sense. I would be curious. There is, as I said, in the German language market, and I'm also covering Austria there. There is very rarely a genre film, like a horror film, but even more rarely it is made by a woman. But we have it. So there is, for example, The Devil's Bath.
Yes.
Amazing.
Veronika Franz and Severin Fiala.
Yes.
It's two people, but she is the female director there.
Yes.
So this is a kind of a historical drama, but made into the mode of a horror film. And another film which is really like getting all the awards at the moment is a German film called Sound of Falling. Looking into the Sun would be the perfect translation of the title, In die Sonne schauen, by Masha Schilinski. And she's actually from the Film Academy where I'm teaching. And she also made a historical film which covers several decades of female fates in a certain surrounding, and it has the characteristics of a ghost film. So Sound of Falling is leading towards the logics of a ghost film. It's not really a blank horror, but I think The Devil's Bath has more like really like splatter elements and really harsh scenes as well.
Yeah.
So there is a tendency to use the position of the art house auteur filmmaking to move towards the genre. What do you think about this tendency?
Well, I think that's where we've always existed. Unfortunately, women have been relegated to kind of like indie, even like exploitation, like Doris Wishman and Roberta Finley, and like we've been kind of relegated to these areas because we are not given the budgets that, let's say, the only example I can think of is Catherine Bigelow, you know?
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
But she
that's
insists
kind of where we
she's
live.
not a female filmmaker.
Yes.
She says
yes.
she's just a filmmaker.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's true. That's true. And she's been told, I remember her saying, like, I've been told that I direct like a man. And it's like, what the fuck does that mean?
Yeah. She
doesn't even know what that means either. But Heidi, what do you literally wrote the book. Literally. So.
I think horror is fluid, especially when the profit motive is shaky. So I think that you can tell all kinds of stories that have elements of horror in them, like The Devil's Bath. I agree with you. It is a historical drama with horrific elements to it. And I think that a lot of the sort of like art house style horror that you see from the United States, like a lot of the things by A24 or by coming out from Neon, I think those they try to mimic those elements of playing with genre, playing with crossing over into drama, into, you know, what kind of story is this? It's highbrow and, you know, might have been made in Europe. I think there's definitely that style of horror film for sure. And women, anytime a filmmaker is more free to make what they want to make, I think the films will get weirder and weirder because people are exploring ideas and their own styles, things that are usually stifled when you're making something for, let's say, a studio, right? You don't see a lot of personal style when it comes to no offense, I love the Blumhouse films, but you can't look at one and say, oh, I recognize that director. I see their work in this one. They're all kind of cookie cutter. So when you have more freedom, when you can play with genres, when you can play with the expectations of the audience and whether something's really happening or not, I think that you get these films like you're talking about, like The Devil's Bath, you know? I don't think that movie could have been made in the United States. Or if it was, it would have had to have been paid for by a rich individual. No studio, I don't think, would have made that film, because the first question they would have is, well, what's the genre? And then I think people get away with it sometimes by saying, well, it's kind of like an A24 film. It's kind of like an you know, I'm like a Midsummer, and then they're like, oh, okay, so weird. Okay, that sometimes sells. We can do that. I want to circle back because I forgot to say something about the first question that you had about, do women and men make films differently when it comes to horror? And because I thought about this a lot, and I thought about this the whole time I was writing my book. And sometimes I feel like there is a very big difference between the way that women make films and the way that men make films. And sometimes I don't, because I'll start thinking about films that men have made about women, like, you know, Rosemary's Baby or something like that. And I'm like, well, these are all very women-centric movies. But at the end of the day, when I pull back and I let all that information sit in my head, I think what it comes down to is, in general, women, when they make horror movies, tend to have, if they're in charge of the story creation, they will tend to have female characters in their stories. Way more than men will. Men do sometimes, but I also think when it comes to rape revenge stories specifically, men and women tell them very differently.
Oh yeah.
In rape revenge films made by men, usually for a male audience, rape it's such a terrible, horrible thing, but it's really very sexualized, and it becomes you're watching something done to a woman. Whereas if you're watching a rape revenge horror movie made by a woman, the rape is not sexy. It's a horrific, violent thing, and you're experiencing it from the point of view of the woman. So I do notice that difference sort of across the board when it comes to horror movies, and when the director is either a man or a woman, for sure. I just wanted to touch on that because I forgot to say that.
Yeah. And I want to say something really quickly about, like, when we talk about feminist horror films, like feminism should not be a dirty word in the horror genre. It just means, can you tell stories about women that depict us as actual human beings?
Yes.
That's it. That's all a feminist horror film is.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be this sort of superficial interpretation of like subverting the genre and having women kill men or whatever, or the opposite of, the flesh, the knife as the stand-in for the fleshy penis.
Yeah. No, I think, and the woman doesn't have to be a good character. She doesn't have to be a good person. She can be a villain. Exactly. But it's like, what kind of... But here's one thing, though, too. And I don't know if you've noticed this, but films that have very poorly written female characters tend to also have really poorly written male characters. Like, if you think about, like, the classic, like, the women in slasher films run around with their tops up. Well, the men are all kind of bad, dumb characters, too. Like, it's basically bad writing will create stories that have women that aren't real women in them. And that's I think, to me, it's a big sign of bad writing overall.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jovanka, sorry.
Go ahead. Oh no.
You can go on if you like.
Just reminded me of something John Carpenter said once, when he was asked about like this whole thing about putting girls in movies to, get them naked and killed or whatever. And he was like, it is not something that I did on purpose. It's not that he's like, I don't think it's that any of us did it on purpose. It's just that, like, given the choice between putting my like schlub friend in the movie, guy friend, or a pretty girl, I picked the pretty girl because they look better on camera. So I don't know if that's like, any reasonable defense to how slasher films developed in that way, but it's just a funny answer.
It's also interesting that especially the slasher cinema is also connected to the final girl trope, which is then considered a feminist element in film history, but
also a trope. She's not a real person.
Yeah. That's what I'm heading for, because you mentioned, Jovanka, the term female gaze. I would like to come to that, and also Heidi, you mentioned the film Rosemary's Baby, but I would say Repulsion is even probably more appropriate as an example of a film really into the fate of one desperate and obviously sick woman that is in isolation, and things are getting into chaos. So the notorious Roman Polanski has directed both these films, which is really interesting. I keep it at that. But is there... So from my perspective, female gaze is the answer to the male gaze by Laura Mulvey, like a phrase from 1975, which was applied as a critique of classical Hollywood films, of the films by Sternberg and Hitchcock and so on. And when I've been thinking about this for like over 20 years now, and I'm teaching actually gaze theory in film. And my opinion is that especially horror films have developed a whole variety of gazes, which can be differentially named as well. Like there's an animal gaze, for example. There's a surveillance gaze, like films like...
I agree with you. It's not so binary. It's not just about men and women. And I agree with you.
So that's what I'm heading for. If you are mentioning a female gaze, and I don't say there is no female gaze, there for sure is also a female gaze, but I think yeah, it's not binary. It's a whole variety. Where would you see the feminine aspect of gaze in films? It's towards both of you. Maybe you have an example or something which you think this really worked. That's a different perspective actually in this sense of the female gaze.
How do you go first?
So 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 the idea of the female gaze in opposition to the male gaze, like we're talking about, as if there's two, as if there's a binary.
Mm-hmm.
The implication is that it's sexual, right? I've never found the female sexual gaze very common in horror movies in general. I think that I appreciate Laura Mulvey, and I do appreciate these different concepts of the male gaze and the final girl and all of these things. I think they're very fun to explore, but I also am not really a big fan of, let's say, like Freud being inserted into every aspect of horror movies. And so I think that if I had to describe what I consider the female gaze, it's actually usually a gaze of a person who's in danger, who's in fear of their life or their situation, rather than I'm sure there are slasher films where it's a woman and she's checking out the guy in the bathroom, but I honestly couldn't tell you off the top of my head, and I wouldn't be very impressed by that. I think that women, if the lead character is a woman and you're seeing the world through her eyes and the experience, whatever it is, through her, then the gaze will be different than the gaze of a male character, and especially the traditional audience male gaze of the slasher film, for sure. But I think it's not always easy to put things in little boxes like that too. That's what I think.
No, because I think it depends on the intention, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I mentioned Doris Wishman, Roberta Findlay. Those women made exploitation films, right?
Yeah.
Before Herschel, well, I mean, especially with Doris, probably before even Herschel Gordon Lewis picked up a camera. And they were women making male gaze films.
Yeah.
Right. I would say for the most part, wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. And don't underestimate the importance of people making films because they were trying to make a buck. There are a lot of artists out there who make films because they're compelled to make art and they're passionate. And then there are also a lot of people, especially in the low-budget world throughout the past, in the 20th century, who made movies that happened to be horror or happened to be exploitation or action because they thought they could sell them and make some money, and that they weren't that heavily invested in the stories or in the characters. And that very much exists, too. So I always, when we talk about the male gaze in horror films, it tends to be slasher films where there isn't a whole lot of art behind them most of the time, that mostly they're made for sensationalism or for sales or to get people in seats. And if you have a film that is an art film, it's somebody's personal passion project, regardless of however they're getting it funded, I think you'll start to see some very different things than you will in a film that's made for, let's say, the drive-in theater in 1972. Right.
Yeah, you mentioned Polanski, and Repulsion, my favorite film is, right? As you know, and as much as we love these movies that depict women as like fucking hysterical psychotics.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure that, if a woman made Repulsion, I think it would be very similar, except because madness is madness, right? And except that maybe she would be more multidimensional, right?
Yeah.
She would be more than just a crazy woman who is repressing all of her sexuality, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that would be the difference.
Yeah, we don't get many details.
You would see us also being like mothers and also having all these other kind of responsibilities and filling all these other roles, and maybe being both good and bad, because people can be both.
Yes.
Right? So I don't know if that answers your question about female gaze, but
Yeah, I was curious about this because I was asking myself, isn't the construction of a certain gaze, be it male or female, possible for like every really reflected filmmaker, regardless of biological context? But at the same time, the question comes up: what if a man makes a film like Repulsion? Can there be a difference? And you answered that actually. On the other way, Raw, for example, by Julia Ducournau,
Yes.
is a film which kind of is similar about this, problem-ridden female protagonist who is into cannibalism,
Yes.
a sexualized form of cannibalism. And also, quite interesting. When I saw Bones and All by Luca Guadagnino, who's a
loved
queer
it.
filmmaker,
Loved it.
great
Yeah.
film as well. Yeah, it all these films come up, and then they mix, and I always think
Yeah.
about what are these gays theories? Are they really working? Yeah, when covering all those different films made by very different people with a similar purpose, probably, like the intimate dealing with very troubled people.
There's,
Yeah.
Marina Devan, like, to go further back, Marina
Yeah,
Devan's film
yeah.
Under the Skin, right?
In my skin, yeah.
In My Skin,
in the
yeah,
skin,
that's
in
her.
my skin, right? Thank you. Also about cannibalism, self cannibalism.
Yeah.
Woman
Yeah,
eating herself alive, right?
yeah.
I mean, it's been a while. It's been a while since I've seen that film, but that's also
It's a very personal, very intimate film,
I think that
and
one had a lot to do with her working through some of her body dysmorphia. I think that's what her impulse was.
hadn't she had an accident? I think she'd had, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think she'd had an
Yeah,
accident of some kind where she went through, so she was recovering from the trauma of her body recovering from an injury. And it
right.
kind of triggered these thoughts in her about this kind of movie and about, your body being, so easily torn apart and, consumed and degraded. And would it be terrifying if you did that to yourself?
Yeah, and that kind of expression of stories about that kind of deep intimacy with the body, and they're not exclusive to women. I think
No.
we tend to have more, obviously, for obvious reasons, we tend to have more of an antagonistic relationship with our bodies, but also that you look at something like The Fly, and
The
it's
Fly,
really
yeah.
the same fucking thing, right?
Yes. Yeah.
That's made by a man, and Lucky McKee's film May,
Yeah. Yeah.
feminist. I would say it's a feminist horror film made by a man that has a very woman's gaze to it, but that's because of who Lucky is. If you know, and he's a good friend of mine. If you know who Lucky is, he when you watch that film, it almost feels like it was made by a woman. Doesn't it feel that way to
Yeah,
you?
it sure does.
Yeah.
But I think that again, I think it's a characteristic of good filmmaking. Like if your character is going to be a woman, and it's this kind of story, then it should feel like you're in that person's head. It should feel
Yeah.
like a fully fleshed character and someone that you can, whether you relate to them in a positive or negative way, but you understand them and you relate to that character in a certain way, as opposed to they just don't make sense and they're one dimensional. So I
Yeah.
think somebody like Lucky makes thoughtful films with thoughtful
Yes.
characters, and then by default, if that character happens to be a woman in the right hands of the right filmmaker, it feels real.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the film's about loneliness, right? I think, as the existentialists say, it's part of the human condition, and
Yeah.
he executed that, expertly.
Yeah.
For me, Titan by Ducournau is a very interesting example because it's as soon as you think, oh, there's a male gaze depiction of a female body dancing in the beginning, it is a trap, and you see the men walking around. They are not even like looking at her. They are only interested in the cars, and which she is as well, the protagonist in the beginning, and she's also happening to be a female serial killer, and then she changes her gender because she wants to hide, and she acts as the son of like this fire lieutenant guy who happens to be a middle-aged bodybuilder as well, who has huge troubles with his own masculinity. So for me, Titan is really a film interested in like dealing with all these variations and challenging us as an audience. Would you think?
Can I say something controversial?
Mm-hmm.
Please.
I'm not sure I liked Titan. I think it was. Yeah, I think I liked the first half better than the second half. So I'm approaching this as an audience member who likes horror movies. I think that it was two completely different films to me. That's what it felt like. And I honestly am not sure I understand it. I'm not sure if we're supposed to understand it. I'm not sure the director understands it. And I think that sometimes that's okay, right? I think Lars von Trier does not understand his films, but he makes them anyway. I do. I genuinely do. But I definitely don't think I understood it. And I think that it was, I don't think it's necessarily a horror movie, really. No, like, I think if you tell an audience member you're about to see a horror movie, and that experience is what they're looking for, I don't think they would be satisfied with this film.
Sure.
I don't know that means it's bad or good or bad, but to me it was an odd film that I don't think I need to watch again. I don't know how you feel about it. Do you feel like you want to watch it again? Like,
I liked it. I mean, but just to remark on what you said about about this scene where where there's a naked woman and the men aren't paying attention. This is what the female gaze, right? It's about the choices that we make as filmmakers. So fucking Carrie, for example, the beginning of Carrie, De Palma, you have that, it opens with that lurid shower scene,
slow motion,
of slow motion tracking shot through what's supposed to be a bunch of fucking teenage high school girls,
the 26-year-old women,
towering together, like,
oh really?
That's the difference. I rewatched that fairly recently with my daughter, and I was like, fuck, man, I always that De Palma's a perv, but like I really felt it, and because I was like, because Violet, who comes from a different generation, is looking at me like, what the fuck is this? Why is this in here? She's like, we don't even have showers at my high school. I was like, sweetheart, it's a fantasy. It's a male fantasy. Because 99% of all films in the last 100 years have been made by men. You're going to see a lot of male fantasy, right?
Because I didn't have showers like that at my high school. Did you?
No,
I didn't.
I wish I did. Fuck. Oh my God.
Yeah, it's
nothing like that, like we had to do that in private. I had to shower with girls in private. Jesus. Anyway, moving on.
I would bring in another example, which was made by a male director, which is Martyr, the French film, of course, not the American one, by Pascal Laugier. This film was praised for dealing with two immigrant protagonists, coming up female actors who get this really intense roles. But the film is about torture, about the total submission of a female character, and especially erasing her body. Especially by skinning her alive and so on in the end, and making her a martyr, obviously. So this is a very complex, very complicated film, which a lot of people hate, a lot of people like. It's also two films in one. I agree with you.
It's like a home invasion movie.
Yeah, sure.
first,
It is.
and
Yeah.
then it turns into martyrs, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
How would you comment on this film? Is this film exploiting this topic of female suffering, or is this film probably on another level of like dealing with it on a more reflexive level?
Well, this was one of those movies that was part of that notorious torture porn cycle of,
Hmm.
the French, extreme cinema,
Yeah.
around in that, was it 2007-ish, around
Yeah,
that
Yeah.
time,
yeah,
Perfect.
before
Yeah.
2010. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
it.
exactly. And so there was a bunch of those films, there's the Inside, the French filmmakers,
Yep.
and they made that, crazy woman, a crazy movie about the, pregnant woman being, tormented
Tormented, yeah.
by, a female killer. But I don't know. I mean, I saw Martyrs at TIFF, and I had, my own feelings about it.
Hmm.
Overall, I liked it because, I mean, you find you can call it torture porn, but I like movies that fucking push boundaries. I like movies that are, trying hard to make us feel deeply uncomfortable. So,
Yes.
like, I didn't find it offensive or anything like that because
No.
it was a woman, and that didn't get under my skin at all.
I feel the same way about the movie. I enjoyed it. I enjoy a good round of torture in my movies, and I have no problem as an audience member just watching a movie. I have no problem if the victim happens to be a woman. There are a lot of really silly older movies, especially the Italian ones, where women. It looks like the cover of one of those old, men's like torture magazines from the, where women are on like, lying down on a table being tortured by Nazis. You know what I mean? Like these are all exploitative and a little silly. And I like movies that aren't afraid to push boundaries and make people feel ill. Like I have a very high tolerance for violence. Yeah. So I kind of like that. It almost feels like if a movie actually makes me uncomfortable, I like that. It's like it feels cathartic. Like it sounds so awful, but the best feeling in the world for me is when a movie makes me want to vomit. Like when I feel so ill, or like when I'm done watching the movie and I just kind of feel nauseated and I'm like, oh, I don't feel good. And I'm like, oh, it's the movie. Well done.
It's in a horror film after this many decades of like,
Yeah.
studying horror films as like, basically our, lifelong thesis here. If a horror film can make us feel anything, then it's
Yes.
something, anything.
Exactly.
My favorite is not so much nausea, but it would be
I'm a
more like if
masochist.
a film can make me feel unnerved or despair.
Oh, yes.
Make me feel emotion.
Yes, despair. I felt that way with Bring Her Back. That
Yes.
really got me.
Oh, I
It
see,
got
yeah.
me. Yeah. And I love what do you call it? Like despair porn, basically.
Yeah.
Like Pet Cemetery.
Oh
Pet
my
Cemetery
God.
does the same thing to me.
Directed by a woman, thank you.
Yeah.
Mary
But it's
Lambert,
just
great Mary
about
Lambert.
this horrific trauma and sadness, and you're like, oh my
I
God, it
know,
feels like you've
I
gotten
will-
punched in the gut. Like,
I will never forget the image of when the coffin, when they have the fight at the funeral and the coffin fucking hits the ground and you see the little baby's hand,
Yes,
the coffin
yes.
opens and you see the baby's. I will never
Oh.
forget that.
yeah. Yeah,
Especially
these are
now being a mother, obviously watching
Yeah.
that movie is a different experience. It's the same thing with The Exorcist. When I was a kid, The Exorcist put a permanent wrinkle in my psyche. I was changed forever, but I saw it more from the point of view of the kid, right?
me too.
And yes, but then as you get older and you become a mother, you realize, oh my God, this movie is about the mother. This
Yeah.
movie is about Ellen Burstyn trying to do anything she can to save her daughter. And her despair, her absolute despair about the fact that no one can help them, not science, not
Yeah.
fucking God, no one can help her daughter. And that just kicks me right in the guts as a mother.
Yes, and that there's no reason, nobody did anything bad. Like this little
Yes,
girl
no,
doesn't
yes, she didn't.
deserve it.
Yes,
It's just like
no.
this innocent person is being tormented, and you're like, it's ooh, that's a good one.
That's really interesting because William Friedkin is more of a director of male bonding, films like Sorcerer
Oh, The
or 2000
Sorcerer
Guy
is
in
a fucking
LA.
masterpiece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love them all. I
Yeah.
wrote a book on cruising.
Yeah.
And cruising is really weak on the female character side, despite
Well, because
Karen
it's about
Allen
gay
being
men. It's about
Yeah.
gay men.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. I know it was a joke, but I totally agree on The Exorcist. But also the priests are dealt with in a very similar way to the cops in French Connection and to the adventurers in Sorcerer and so on. So there is this male bonding as well. But I totally agree that the main topic of the film is the mother dealing with her daughter getting
Yeah,
lost.
and my biggest criticism of The Exorcism, if I can find one, if I can reach for one, is that it sort of like paints good and evil with too broad of a brush.
Yes.
Right? It's just like this is good and this is evil, and at the end, as satanic as that movie is, good triumphs over evil, social order is restored. And we are told that if we just have faith in God, everything is going to be okay.
I wonder how hardcore, I really wonder sometimes how hardcore Catholics feel about The Exorcism or The Exorcist and movies about exorcism in general. Like, it completely reinforces every single hardcore Catholic belief that they have. Mm-hmm. Like it's like, yeah, Catholicism's real. Everything's real. The demons are real. So I wonder, to me, I'm like, that's really basically just a very Catholic film. And I wonder, I really do, how if they're like, no, you can't watch that.
For me, every exorcism film seems to be like a Christian propaganda film.
Yes, doesn't it?
Believe again.
Totally. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, guess what, everybody? It's real. It's all real. Yeah. Better pray.
And they always have this kind of neat ending with a bow and where it's all kind of like, like I said, good triumphs over evil, and they almost always have. Oh, speaking of The Exorcist, I'm looking at a copy of the script right now that I got at Hollywood Book and Poster. Yeah, I was just looked up and saw it. Yeah, I mean, and I actually really liked Legion for the book.
I did too. I did too.
Really liked that.
Yep.
Yeah, the book that upon which Exorcist 3 was based.
Yeah.
Obviously, which is one of those films. One of those films that you're like, yeah, I can't be friends with people who don't like Exorcist 3.
It's so good. It's just
lucky.
that it's got the one scene. It's like there are some movies that have scenes that just you never leave your head ever. And just exactly. It's just that to the first time I saw that, it was emblazoned onto my soul, and it's still there.
So many great lines in that too. I dream of a rose and falling down a long flight of stairs, and what was the one about the whole human race is a murder victim? Is that it?
Yeah,
Something like that. So fucking good. Humanity is a murder victim, like so fucking good.
Yeah.
And Brad Dourif, and just everything about it. I mean, George C. Scott just chewing up scenery. The dynamic between him and the priest, is just their dialogue is amazing.
Yeah.
But that whole fucking monologue about the fish, the carp. The carp in the bathtub is just a study in how to write fucking cool dialogue, man. Move over Quentin Tarantino.
And the woman crawling on the ceiling.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Just like nothing. Yeah. She's just walking there.
But you realize,
doesn't realize,
those little moments at the beginning where you realize, like, you rewatch that and you hear the voices of it using all these old people's voices, early on, and you put those pieces together when he says, like, when he asks him how he's getting out and killing these people, and before Brad Dourif falls back into unconsciousness, he says, "Old friends."
Yeah.
And like, I love that fucking movie.
I see. But actually, I saw it and know nothing about it, and I saw it in a Munich Film Festival when it came out, and I was really surprised. And then I read the novel, which is also quite good.
Yeah, it is.
I actually like William Peter Blatty's work.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too. Yeah. Ninth configuration.
Yeah.
That's him, right?
Yeah.
Um, um, yeah, huge fan. I recently showed it to my 15-year-old daughter. And she said, well, what about you're going to show me Exorcist 3 without showing me Exorcist 2? And I was like, we don't talk about Exorcist
Yeah. Yeah. It didn't happen. It's like Halloween 3. It's
2.
like,
It's a
Wait a
tragedy.
minute. I love Halloween 3. Season
I
3.
do too, but it's basically like,
Like,
it's not really like part of the series. It's just like, it should
exactly.
be its own thing. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, if they had just called it something else, it would have been fine.
Exactly.
It's
Call
like
Season of
a
the Witch.
Serbian film. If they had just given it a different name, they would have been
Yes.
okay,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
If they didn't
Yeah.
shame an entire nation of people, you know. And those guys are
Yeah.
nice guys, but
Yeah, I don't think that film has anything to do with Serbia other than it happens to be set in Serbia, right? Like that's
well, I mean,
it.
those without to get it without getting into that movie too much, it's like really they were trying to just say fuck you to the Serbian film industry,
Yes.
and they
Yes.
did that. They did that. It's just ended up becoming one of the most repulsive, like repugnant things ever made, and it's
Yeah.
and I don't mean this in an insult to disparage them, but it's a very juvenile film.
Yes.
And I almost wish
Yes.
people would stop talking about it. It's kind of like one of those movies in the history of like dare films. When we were growing up, it was like, "Ooh, have you seen Cannibal Holocaust?"
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Edgelord
you,
films.
yeah, you like watch them on a dare, and I think the Serbian film is kind of the apex of that at this point, right? And
Yeah.
and that's where it sits in the history of horror films, right?
Yeah.
They just, I think they should have called it something else.
Yeah.
That's offending.
Give it a
Especially
different
to you.
name. Yes, especially to me being
Yeah.
a fucking Serbian person, because people always now, people don't know a lot about Serbia, right? They know
No.
about the Balkan War and they know about a Serbian film. So they always ask me like, "Oh yeah, have you seen that movie?"
Did you survive?
Yeah.
Yes. I saw the screenwriter's new film at Sitges, Karmadonna. And it's
yeah.
also, a crazy movie, but very different from a Serbian film. He's kind of going in his own direction, but it does have its own repulsive moments. I don't want to, spoil anything, but there's some pretty disgusting scenes in that film. But is anyone really surprised
Yeah. People are probably expecting it, honestly, right? Like,
from those two? Yeah, for
yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
So we are slowly coming to the end of this episode,
Okay.
and
Sorry.
I would, I mean, we could go on forever. I really enjoy it. Are there any future projects which you want to introduce us to?
Well, yeah. I mean, I personally, I took a long hiatus from film and television because I lost my husband to cancer and was widowed with a young child. And so I took a lot of time off to be present for her and to be obliterated and forged in the crucible, and have had to emerge the other side of this.
I just want to give you a giant hug.
Thank
Like, as you
you.
say this, I wish I could reach through the screen.
Thank you. Well, you are sure. Every time we're together and I talk about this, you just hug me and like comfort me. It's the best. It's the best. But I'm okay.
I know.
I'm okay. I'm almost 4 years out now. It'll be 4 years in May. And for the longest time, I could barely write my own name, never mind a fucking screenplay. And then one day, I started writing just poetry and songs, mostly about hellfire and brimstone, and and then I started writing, and there's a spiritual power in ink to paper, and I started writing, and a couple of things emerged around the same time, and one of them is this film that I'm developing right now, and it will be my next project. It's called Don't Forget Us, and it is about losing my husband, and it is a supernatural horror film about three widows who go on a road trip to scatter their husband's ashes, and they are tormented by this male-coded Serbian shape-shifting demon that is an obvious stand-in for grief, right? And it's the most important thing I've ever written, because it's my husband made me promise I wouldn't give up on my film career. So this is me doing that while also making him part of it. And then the other thing that I kind of started outlining at the same time is a vampire film called The Heart Wants What It Wants. And it's actually a romance, about a woman who thinks she's a 120-year-old vampire. And it, much like George Romero's Martin, she doesn't have fangs. She uses razor blades to cut people, and she meets people through dating apps. And I think it's maybe about the horrors of modern dating. Not that I know a lot about that.
Yeah.
But it's a queer film. She meets a woman and falls in love with a woman who tries to save her, who tries to cure her of her illness, and it fails. And
some Hunger vibes.
Yeah, and maybe there's, maybe there's some sort of like psychoanalysis. My therapist can look at both of these things and maybe see me working through some shit that I'm really like longing for, or needing to get out of my system, or is that sublimating. But so I sort of like shelved the romance one because maybe I wasn't ready for it. But now that I've finished Don't Forget Us and I have producers attached, and we're actually starting to move forward in the process for that film, which is really exciting.
Excellent.
Yes, going to make it up here in Canada.
Excellent.
As an independent film, so I can make it the way that I want to make it. And then I'm now cracking open the heart wants what it wants, because like I said, I think it's the best way to describe that one is sort of like George Romero's Martin meets Promising Young Woman. Mm-hmm. So it's my near dark.
Yeah.
My near dark. Yeah. So I'm really excited.
Yeah, keep us posted on this, definitely.
Of course I will.
Yeah.
Of course I will. So
yeah.
What about you, Heidi? Any more fucking volumes of writing you're gonna do?
Actually, while I was writing that book, I came across so many films that either didn't belong in the book, or I thought they belonged in the book originally, but then I watched them and I was like, this isn't a horror movie, but it's really interesting and weird or cool. And I learned all these cool stories about what some of these films have been through, like the deeper stories about them that I couldn't really fit in, because the book originally was like 200 pages longer than it is now, and I had to cut a lot of stuff out because it was just ridiculous. My publisher was like, "There's no way, we have to cut this stuff out." So a lot of things I talked about, like thrillers, and then a lot of the deeper specific history of certain films, I had to cut out. And there are all these cool stories, in particular about like censorship, or how can I put it? I don't want to blow too much about it, but like interesting things regarding the histories of specific films made by women that aren't necessarily horror, but that were controversial for some reason. There were either events surrounding them, or a specific type of censorship took place, and the story behind it and what happened. And so I'm working on that right now, and I'm excited about that because I have all these cool stories I couldn't put in the first book, so I'm finding a way to fit them in the second book. So, I want to say something before we go. So you're talking about Austrian women directors of horror. Are you aware of Louise Fleck? She was a director in the 1920s. Well, actually started before that. Started in like 1910 in the Austrian Empire. And then, of course, it was no longer the Austrian Empire after 1918, but she continued to make films in Austria after that. And she has a couple horror movies that she made with her husband. And one in particular is that I think you might be very interested in is called Die Anfrau. And it's a ghost story, 1919. And it's and it wasn't made in Germany, but it's technically in the same theme as the other German expressionist horror films that came right after it, like Cabinet of Dr. Caligari and Nosferatu and all these other movies. It was one of the first of those, and it gets. I didn't know about the film until I started researching the film, and I was like, "Why?" As a horror fan. Yeah, it's actually there's a very terrible version on YouTube, but there's actually I believe there's a real version you can purchase as well that's been restored and everything. But for some reason, this movie is just not like the other German expressionist horror films from the time are well known, and this one just isn't. And it takes place. It's a gothic ghost story, basically about this cursed family, and this ghost of an ancient ancestor will come visit the family when a tragedy or something really terrible is about to happen to one of the family members. So, of course, the ghost comes and everybody sees her, and it's this, terrifying, vision of what will come. So, I don't know. I don't know why this film is just not known. It should be. And it's films like that I really...
I only came across the name, actually, her name, but I actually, I was not really aware of the film so far.
She has
so it's a very good thing. Yeah.
She has a film from 1912 that's technically the first feature-length horror movie made by a woman. And it's depending on your definition of horror, but it's based on that novel Trilby by Georges du Maurier. So it's based on that, and it's a feature-length film. And then she has another one that she made right after called Three Tales of Terror. That's also a feature. And then Alice Blaché made a feature-length horror right around then as well. But it's part of Austrian film history, and it should be something that fans of German expressionist cinema know about. And so I hope more people learn about it. Because it's
I will definitely
movie.
research that because, as I said, Severin Films is now dealing with with this era and with the influence of Grand Guignol theater.
I saw that documentary. It was
I
great.
will discuss with David Gregory in this series as well.
Yes,
so
excellent.
It all fits.
Yes, good.
All falls into place.
I'm sad we didn't get to talk about. I wanted to talk about Antonia Bird.
Oh yeah,
right. I wanted to talk about Mary Herron. You always want to touch on all these amazing women filmmakers. Like she just got a Lifetime Achievement Award married when we were at Sitges, and she actually said, like, she mentioned me in her speech, which was so sweet, because she was talking about how her and I were having a private conversation about, like, I did not know that women could be filmmakers, especially horror filmmakers, because I'd spent my entire life seeing directed by so-and-so. And it wasn't until later that I saw directed by Mary Herron and directed by Catherine Bigelow, directed by Antonia Bird, and that I went, oh, women can make horror movies? Wow. Okay. Well, and this, that stayed in the back of my head for a long time as I was a magazine editor, and got tired of asking all my male friends to make horror movies that depict women as people. And Guillermo del Toro said, you should just do it yourself. That's how this whole mess started. But I just we didn't even get to talk about them. We didn't even get to talk about Ravenous. And speaking of gays, that Ravenous is a completely, it's a cannibal film. It doesn't feel like it was made by a woman. It's just like a bizarre
it's a cannibal western, which is even more important.
Bizarre,
and
but
I will actually.
Women can also be just journeyman directors. You know what I mean? We can just be hired to tell a good story. It doesn't always have to be about our plumbing this fount of deep well of deep personal pain, feminine pain. It doesn't always have to be that. We can just work and tell stories.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Sorry, Marcus, you were trying to say something?
I was trying. No, I was trying to say that I will recommend the articles and texts where all these are honored and mentioned and analyzed. So they will be given justice in this episode.
Right, and there's also, obviously Heidi's book.
Sure. That's part of that.
All of these. By Monica.
All of these.
Yes, all of these movies, the books about women making horror films, right? So if anybody wants to become more educated, read books. What does John Waters say? Don't fuck. Is it John Waters?
Don't fuck it. Don't fuck anyone who doesn't have books. It's
That's
true.
And we will leave at that.
Yes.
And thank you very much.
This was so much fun. Yes. I could have done this all night. I could have talked for 8 more hours. This was so fun.
Bullshit about movies. I love you guys.
Yes, I love you.
Let's do a second part in the future.
Yes, let's do it.
All right.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye, you guys. Good
Bye.
night.